Shabbat Shalom, brothers and sisters. This is what I look like without a gigantic beard. And I'm bleeding from a hole in my hand. Not terribly bad though. There we go. Handled. We're going to be in Genesis 18 and 19 today. Last week we talked about 16 and 17, but before we go any further, had a lot of good emails from people lately. I get way more emails about YouTube than I ever thought I would get in my entire life. However, Yah works in mysterious ways, so I get a lot of emails. And I've been getting a lot of emails about people coming to the way. And one of the questions that I keep getting over and over, and I may eventually do a standout video on this, a breakout video, but how do I feel convicted to keep the way? How do I keep the way? Okay. Well, the first thing is know that in the Old Testament, right, we have this portion called the greatest commandment, which is Deuteronomy 6:4, right? And that is the Shema. It's like the Holy of Holies for prayers. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. And that is Shema Yisrael Yahweh Eloheinu Yahweh Echad. So that means, hear, O Israel. Who's Israel? We are Israel. Okay? Not the city-state of Israel. We are Israel. We're the physical body of the church. God's chosen people. Hear, O Israel, Yahweh, God, is our God. That's what it means. Yahweh Eloheinu. Yahweh is our God. Yahweh is one, Echad. And that Echad, we've talked about a lot here. The importance of that, because that plays into the Old Testament prophecy of the Messiah, which is Yeshua. So we have the Shema. And then if you read Deuteronomy 6:4, you'll see past that, 6:5, 6:6, it talks about you will write this down and teach it diligently to your children. And you'll talk about it as you rise up in the morning, and you'll talk about it as you lay down in the evening, and you'll talk about it as you go about the way. And you will hang this on your gates and on your doorposts as a sign. And that was done in ancient times. They still even have it on the gates of the old city in Jerusalem now, the mezuzah. And the mezuzah is the Shema and the 10 Commandments. And if you read the Old Testament judges, they literally had judges. And when the judge would render a verdict, a judgment, people would say, well, why did you do that? Bro, it's right there, hanging up on the gate. Thou shalt not do murder. You murdered. Done, right? So if you're new to the way, or you were convicted to keep the way, start with the Shema morning and evening, and I would encourage you to write it down. And see, the next thing past that, right, is the greatest commandment. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might, right? Which is what Yeshua tells the Pharisees when they try and jam them up. Pharisees and the Sadducees. And then he says, and then you shall love your neighbor as yourself, and on all this hangs the law and the Torah. The law is the Torah, right? On all this hangs all the law. Or on this hangs all the law. Now that doesn't negate the law, but it illustrates the point of love the Lord your God with everything you got, and be kind to people. Love your neighbor as yourself. And understand that kindness precipitates love. You can't have love without kindness, and you're not really loving people if you're not being kind to them first. So dwell on that. But the next thing that what I'm trying to say is, if you're convicted to walk in the way, to keep the commandments, start with eating a clean biblical diet. That means, and you can look this up in Leviticus, you can Google this. We live in the most technologically advanced time that we know of. you have answers at your fingertips, right? But you can look this up in Leviticus as to what you should eat, what you should not eat. But basically, fish that don't have scales, you don't eat. So that's going to be like catfish, shellfish, stuff like that. I know. You don't eat swine, pork. Okay, really, you don't eat any land animal unless it has a split hoof, chews the cud, right, and has a 4-chambered stomach. So those are going to be ruminants. That's like goats, sheep, deer, cattle, oxen, bison, a couple other animals, right? The yak. Right, but by and large, you're talking beef here in America. Beef, sheep, goat, deer. Deer's a big one. But no piggies. Okay, and then you keep the Sabbath. Okay, you keep the Sabbath sanctified and set apart. Sanctified literally means set apart. Holy is a transliteration of the word sanctified. So when something is holy, it is set apart. So you set the Sabbath apart. You observe the Sabbath. It's one of the 10 commandments that most people just completely ignore. So you observe the Sabbath. And the way that you do that, bullet points here. Again, this is all in Leviticus. It's all in the Tanakh, the first 5 books of the Bible. And of course, this one chicken is like, oh, we're doing YouTube? Here I come. He's literally running right at me right now. The rest of them are all over there on the other side of the barn. This one ran right over to me. Thank you, chicken. If you start gobbledygocking, I'm throwing things at you. Shabbat is about rest. The Sabbath was made for man. Man was not made for the Sabbath. So it's about resting. It's about reading the Word. I use the Sabbath as a day for me to instruct my family. We read the Word together. And that's like our weekly Bible study together. You are instructed to do no work. A lot of the laws about Shabbat, about the Sabbath, are do no work. Should I kindle a fire? Can I kindle a fire? Can I not kindle a fire? It's about doing work, okay? And a lot of people try and game this system based upon what's considered work and what's not considered work. My benchmark for what is work is if it makes me go, that's work. If not, it's not work. If I start something that I don't consider work and halfway through it I go, I set it down and walk away because that's work, and we don't do work on the Sabbath. We're not to handle money or do business on the Sabbath. And a Sabbath day journey nowadays, I think the modern interpretation of is no more than a half a tank of gas. Because if you're not going to do business or handle money, you can't be buying gas on the Sabbath, which means don't drive any farther in one direction than you can turn around and drive home again without buying gas. So, observe the Sabbath. And the last is keep the feasts. These are kind of the big 3 on the Torah, the way. Keeping feasts is, it's real easy. Again, there's Google, man. There's several, and you can go to, I think it's Leviticus 23, is where you find the outlines for all of the feasts. We just had Yom Teruah, which is Yom being the day. Yom means day of. And Teruah is the sound that the trumpets make, the shofar, the sound that it makes. So the day of the sound of trumpets was Thursday. And by the time y'all see this, we'll be into Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles, this is our booth, our tabernacle behind us right here. So Sukkot is coming up, right? And then just look up feasts, biblical feasts. There's lots of them. And there are people far smarter than I am that know this stuff better than I do. So if you're new to the way, here we are 10 minutes in. Okay, if you're new to the way, the big three that you should be doing is clean, biblical eating, keeping the Sabbath, and keeping the feasts. There's literally in the New Testament a question of when the Gentiles start believing in Yeshua, the Jews are like, what do we do with these people? So they're given some very basic instruction. Basically refrain from doing pagan stuff. And then, like, don't eat animals that have been strangled, don't drink blood, don't fornicate. Shut up, bird. And there's one other one, I don't remember what it is. But they're all pagan worship, right? And then they say, and you'll get the rest on Shabbat when you read the Torah or have the Torah read to you. So that's what you do on Shabbat, right? You get the basics down, and then you let the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, guide you from there in this word. And then you also reach out to people who are smarter than you at this and ask for their direction, and they will guide you. Just as I have been guided by other people will guide you. So don't be afraid to ask questions, because you're asking questions about how to properly serve the Most High. There's no better questions than that. All right, good. That should probably be a standalone video. In fact, I'll probably chop this. What's this? 11, right about 11:30. Okay. I'll leave this in, but I'm also going to cut it out, if that makes sense. All right. So we are in Genesis 18 and 19 today. Grab your Bibles. Grab your coffees. Grab your 12 gauges with number 7 birdshot in them for chicken extermination. And let's read Genesis 18. Now remember, we just talked about, we're coming off of 16 and 17, the covenant of circumcision with Abraham. And there's a lot of New Testament discussion there, you know. I think is it Acts? I don't remember. But in one of the Pauline letters, it's talking about, you know, brethren, let your heart be circumcised and make no difference between the circumcised and the uncircumcised, Jew and Gentile. Okay. Yes. And that's the redemptive blood of Yeshua. Now, Yeshua also said, I come first for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So, and then everybody else. But don't take that too far out of context, okay? We talked about circumcision last week. If you're circumcised, sweet. If you're not, sweet. If you want to be, sweet. What's hanging between your legs is none of my business. All right. So we talked about that covenant. We talked about Hagar and Sarai. And then, interestingly enough, we were in Proverbs during the Wisdom live stream. Proverbs 5 and 6, which the boiled down version of Proverbs 5 and 6 is, don't mess with hoes, right? And yet we see right here at the beginning of the book, Sarai and Hagar and Abram. And what do we have here? Basically a story of hoetry. So, don't mess with hoes. All right, so let's pick up in 18. And Yahweh appeared to him by the terebinth trees of Mamre, while he was sitting in the tent door in the heat of the day. This is Abram we're talking about. And he lifted his eyes and looked, and saw 3 men standing opposite him. And when he saw them, he ran from the tent door to greet them, and bowed himself to the ground. And said, Yahweh, if I have now found favor in your eyes, please do not pass your servant by. Please let a little water be brought, and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree. So he's saying, dude, stay a while. Have a drink. Which is what I'd probably say if God showed up at my front door. Dude, do you want a beer? Right? And let me bring you a piece of bread, and refresh your hearts, and then go on, for this is why you have come to your servant. And they said, Do as you have said. Sounds good. Let's party. So Abraham ran into the tent to Sarah and said, Hurry, make ready 3 measures of fine flour, knead it, and make cakes. And Abram ran to the herd, took a tender and good calf, gave it to a young man, and he hurried to prepare it. And he took curds and milk and the calf which he had prepared, and set it before them, and he stood by them under the tree as they ate. Yahweh is eating. It's interesting. Interesting. Well, the 3 men are eating. Okay, it says, And Yahweh appeared to him by the terebinth trees, and he lifted his eyes, and he saw 3 men standing opposite him. Okay, and these 3 men are eating. Okay. And they ate. 9. And they said to him, Where is Sarah your wife? And he said, See, in the tent. And he said, I shall certainly return to you according to the time of life. And he said, capital H, so this is Yahweh talking, I shall certainly return to you according to the time of life, and see, Sarah your wife is having a son. And Sarah was listening in the tent door which was behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old, well advanced in age. Sarah was past the age, or past the way of women. So she was, experienced menopause, right? She's done. And Sarah laughed within herself, saying, After I have grown old, shall I have pleasure, my master, being old too? And Yahweh said to Abraham, Why did Sarah laugh, saying, Shall I truly have a child, since I am old? Is any matter too hard for Yahweh? At the appointed time I am going to return to you, according to the time of life, and Sarah is to have a son. But Sarah denied it, saying, I did not laugh, for she was afraid. And he said, No, but you did laugh. It's probably a losing proposition, arguing with God about what you did or didn't say. And the men rose up from there and looked towards Sodom. And Abraham went with them to send them away. And Yahweh said, Shall I hide from Abraham what I am doing, since Abraham is certainly going to become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him? For I have known him, so that he commands his children and his household after him to guard the ways of Yahweh, to do righteousness and right ruling, so that Yahweh brings to Abraham what he has spoken to him. That's an interesting passage right there. We're probably going to camp on that, because it foot stomps everything we talk about here. For I have known him. This is Genesis 18, verse 19. For I have known him, so that he commands his children and his household after him. The Father knows him. For example, the Father knows you, and you run your household according to the Father's will. And guard the way of Yahweh. Guard the way. Okay. What is the way of Yahweh? Were we not just talking about following the way? Okay. Guard the way of Yahweh. To do righteousness. Righteousness means be lawful. Everybody that you see counted as righteous in this book is somebody who did what the Father told them to do, unquestioningly. What does it say about Noah? And Noah did all that Yahweh commanded, and he was seen as righteous. Abraham. And Abraham had faith in Yahweh, and he was counted as righteous. Okay. And do lawfulness and right ruling. Judgments, judging. We just talked about that, right? Okay. So that Yahweh brings to Abraham, brings to you, what he has spoken to him, what he has promised you. Yah comes to Abraham and says, Hey, I'll build nations out of you. Abraham says, That's funny. I don't have any kids, bro. And Yah says, Do you believe I can do this? And Abraham says, Yeah, I believe you can do this. God says, Watch me. And Abraham gets what he was looking for, because God found him righteous. Because God saw that Abraham did everything that he said he was going to do. He believed on the Lord. Obedience brings blessing. That's something we talk about all the time here. Obedience brings blessing. And here we have it in Genesis 18, verse 19, just laid out for us. For I have known him so that he commands his children and his household after him to guard the way of Yahweh, to do righteousness and right ruling, so that Yahweh brings to Abraham what he has spoken to him. And Yahweh said, because the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is very heavy, I am going down now to see whether they have done altogether according to the outcry against it that has come to me, and if not, I know. So, earlier here in verse 17, it says, and Yahweh said, shall I hide from Abraham what I am doing? Should I keep this from Abraham? And then he basically answers his own question. And he says, no. In verse 18, he says, no, I'm going to build a great and mighty nation out of this guy, and he's done everything I've asked him to do, so I'm going to let him know. So then in 20, he lets us know, hey man, I'm about to judge Sodom and Gomorrah. So 22, so the men turned away from there and went towards Sodom, but Yahweh still stood before Abraham. And Abraham drew near and said, would you also destroy the righteous with the wrong? Suppose there are 50 righteous within the city, would you also destroy the place and not spare it for the 50 righteous that were in it? Far be it from you to act in this way, to slay the righteous with the wrong, so that the righteous should be as the wrong. Far be it from you, does the judge of all the earth not do right? Bold words, man. And Yahweh said, if I find in Sodom 50 righteous within the city, then I shall spare the place for all their sakes. Y'all are probably familiar with this passage, right? And Abraham answered and said, look, please, I who am but dust and ashes have taken it upon myself to speak to Yahweh. Yeah. You think? Okay. Suppose there are 5 less than the 50 righteous. Would you destroy all of the city for lack of 5? And he said, capital H, and Yah said, if I find there 45, I do not destroy it. And Abraham spoke to Yah again and said, suppose there are found 40. And Yah said, I would not do it for the sake of 40. And Abraham said, let not Yahweh be displeased, and let me speak. He's basically saying, beg your pardon, sir. And let me speak. Suppose there are found 30. And Yah said, I would not do it if I found 30 there. And Abraham said, look, please, I have taken upon myself to speak to Yahweh. Suppose there are found 20. And Yah said, I would not destroy it for the sake of 20. And Abraham said, let not Yahweh be displeased, and let me speak only this time. So this is the end of the matter. Suppose there are found 10. And he said, I would not destroy it for the sake of 10. And then Yahweh went away as soon as he had ended speaking with Abraham, and Abraham returned to his place. So, I still think it's interesting that Yah appears as a man. In a way, I'm jealous of Abram/Abraham, that he got to eat and drink and walk with the creator of the universe and to know him personally, like in this temporal world. You know, and there's a meme in Christianity and in the Messiah believing communities, right? You need to know God. And he needs to know you. And I agree completely. But I think it would just be amazing to like literally be on a first name basis with God here in the temporal world. You're just hanging out in your tent one day and he just shows up and he's like, what are you doing? Get up. Let's go for a walk. I need to talk with you. Probably also scary as hell. Could be scary as hell. Alright, so 19. And the 2 messengers came to Sodom in the evening. Messengers, right? The men who appeared as men, the 2 messengers. We talked last week about messengers. Angels are messengers, right? That's anytime you see the word angel in a Bible, that means messengers of God. And we are, to a large degree, supposed to be messengers of God. Move this camera just a hair. There we go. So you can go back last week and watch that. And the two messengers came to Sodom in the evening. And Lot, remember Lot? Abram had to go rescue Lot with his 318 of his household servants. And they kicked a bunch of butt in the valley of Siddim. And then on the way back out, Abram runs into Melchizedek, priest of the Most High, Yah. And Melchizedek blesses Abram, and Abram tithes to Melchizedek. And there's lots of people that believe that Yeshua, or that Melchizedek was Yeshua. Because it says later in this book that Yeshua was a priest in the order of Melchizedek. So anyway, that was the story, or the first part of the story of Lot. Okay. And when Lot saw them, he rose up to meet them, and he bowed himself with his face toward the ground. And he said, "Look, please, my masters, please turn into your servant's house and spend the night and wash your feet and rise early and go away." It's like, look, man, you don't want to be here. And they said, "No, but let us spend the night in the open square." Excuse me. But he urged them strongly, and they turned into him and came into his house. And he made them a feast and baked unleavened bread, and they ate. I wonder if this was the feast of unleavened bread. Shavuot. Google it. S-H-A-V-O-U-T. Shavuot. Okay. And they ate. Before they lay down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, both old and young, all the people from every part surrounded the house. Just one more thing. Shavuot. Because the feasts are outlined in Leviticus, right? And Leviticus is happens after Moshe gets the law from the Father. So, once again, it reinforces the idea that this law predates Moses and the giving of the law to Moses. The law was understood from people walking directly with the Most High. It's only after 400 years of Egyptian captivity does the law need to be given to Moses, because Moses has to lead a group of people who have been slaves for 400 years that don't remember what their heritage is. So, I just find that interesting, that he prepared a feast of unleavened bread. Yeah. But that also ties back into the Hebraic oral traditions, that a lot of this stuff was just spoken. It was a way of life. People lived this. They were taught by doing. They weren't taught out of a book. And learning by doing is very much so a Hebrew way of doing things. Good morning, my love. So, 19:3, but he urged them strongly, and they turned into him and came into his house, and he made them a feast and baked unleavened bread, and they ate. Before they lay down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, both old and young, all of the people, Sodom, old and young, all of the people from every part surrounded the house. And they called to Lot and said to him, "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us and let us know them." Air quote, know them. They're trying to get jiggy with a couple of angels, messengers of God, which is why Yah has decided that this place needs to be wiped off the map in the first place, because it's a den of iniquity. What is iniquity? Iniquity is lawlessness, and we are told that these types of things are abominations and should be kept outside of our camp. So, for lack of a better word, the men of Sodom are trying to pound some angel booty. It's not a good thing. My wife just turned and looked at me like, what did you just say? But that puts it in today's modern vernacular, okay? So if there was any doubt in your mind what's going on here, that's what's going on here. So Lot went out to them through the doorway, shut the door behind him, and said, "Please, my brothers, do not do evil. Look, please, I have 2 daughters who have not known a man. Please let me bring them out to you, and do to them as you wish. Only do no deed to these men, because they have come under the shadow of my roof." Okay, important to understand there. Number 1, I have 2 virgin daughters. You can have them instead of these messengers of God. Bro, that's tough. I have 2 daughters. They're both virgins. My answer is no. Like, no. This is why we have guns. Get away from my house, or I'm going to start shooting. You don't get to have my daughters or these angel messengers. Bang, 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 reload. Bang, 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 bang. So that's the first thing that comes to mind. The second thing is come under the shadow of my roof. That's very much so a Middle Eastern, Arab, Mesopotamic mindset. When you are in, anybody who's deployed into Afghanistan, right? You come into somebody's house, and if you are invited in, you sit and you have tea, you're good. Okay? So there's an implication there. When you are in somebody's house, you are under their protection. If you were to come to my house and it's past dark, right? You're here for the night, I'm responsible for you. Not just to show you hospitality, but to protect you and provide for you as well. You're mine for the evening. So we have that going on here. But they said, stand back, 19:9. And they said, this one came into sojourn, and should he always judge? Now we are going to treat you worse than them. Basically, they're saying, dude, you're not even from here, and yet you're always running your mouth. We're gonna make it worse for you than we are for them. So they pressed hard against the man Lot and came near to break down the door. But the men reached out their hands and pulled Lot into the house with them and shut the door. So the angels opened the door, grabbed Lot, pull him back inside. Then they struck the men who were at the doorway of the house with blindness, both small and great, and they wearied themselves to find the door. And the men said to Lot, have you anyone else here, a son-in-law and your sons and your daughters, and whomever you have in the city, bring them out of this place. For we are going to destroy this place, because the cry against them has grown great before the face of Yahweh, and Yahweh has sent us to destroy it. I wonder who it was that was crying against Sodom and Gomorrah. Not that they don't deserve it, apparently. And Lot went out and spoke to his sons-in-law, who had married his daughters, and said, get up, get out of this place, for Yahweh is going to destroy this city. But his sons-in-law, he seemed to be as joking. But to his sons-in-law, he seemed to be as joking. And when the morning dawned, the messengers urged Lot to hurry, saying, get up, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here, lest you be consumed by the punishment of the city. And while he loitered, the men took hold of his hands and his wife's hand and the hands of his 2 daughters, Yahweh having compassion on him, and they brought him out and set him outside the city. And it came to be, when they had brought them outside, that he said, escape for your life, do not look behind you, nor stay anywhere in the plain. Escape to the mountains, lest you be consumed. And Lot said to them, oh no, Yahweh. Look, please, your servant has found favor in your eyes, and you have increased your loving commitment, which you have shown me by saving my life. But I am unable to escape to the mountains, lest calamity overtake me and die. I'm not skilled in mountain reconnaissance, bro. I don't have a bug-out bag. I got nothing. There's a lesson in there for y'all. Pastor Joe just did a video about that. Your refuge is not your bug-out place. You are not living in your bug-out place. That doesn't make any sense. You can't bug out to where you already are. So Lot doesn't have a bug-out bag. He's like, I can't go up into the mountains, dude. I got nothing. I am unable to escape to the mountains, lest calamity overtake me and I die. Look, please, this city is near enough to flee to, and it is small. Please let me escape there. It is not a small matter, and let my life be saved, ? And Yahweh said to him, Look, I have favored you concerning this matter also, without overthrowing this city for which you have spoken. Hurry, escape there, for I am not able to do any deed until you arrive there. You're holding me up, son. Move with a sense of purpose. Let's go. So the name of the city was Soar, Tso'Ar. The sun had risen upon the earth when Lot entered Soar, and Yahweh rained sulfur and fire on Sodom and Gomorrah from Yahweh out of the heavens. Some people say those were nuclear weapons. Maybe. Maybe not. I don't know. I wasn't there. And neither were you. My gorgeous and talented wife said sulfur is volcanoes. Interestingly enough. Sulfur is also associated with demonology. The smells of sulfur. And the pits of the abyss smell of sulfur. And Yahweh rained sulfur and fire on Sodom and Gomorrah from Yahweh out of the heavens. So he overthrew those cities and all the plain and all the inhabitants of the cities and what grew on the ground. But his wife looked back from behind him, and she became a post of salt. Now, allegedly, that word salt there should have been translated ash. She became a pillar of ash, which is what lends itself, in some ways, a belief of there being a nuclear weapon. But again, I wasn't there. You weren't there. You weren't there. If you're 4,000 years old, you look pretty great for 4,000 years old. I mean, really, you're killing it. Doing awesome. What is that? Pilates? So, anyway, again, with this book, we get what we need, not necessarily what we want. The point here is not how God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. It's that he destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah because they were not acting right. They were not righteous, meaning they were being unlawful. They were trying to bang angels. Not cool. So, and he looked towards, and Abram arose early in the morning and went to the place where he had stood before Yahweh. Okay, so Abram gets up early in the morning, and he looked toward Sodom and Gomorrah and toward all the land of the plain. And he looked and saw the smoke of the land, which went up like smoke of a furnace. Thus it came to be, when Elohim destroyed the cities of the plain, that Elohim remembered Abraham and sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow, when he overthrew the cities in which Lot had dwelt. Interesting point here. The Lord always preserves a remnant. Lot got out. Lot's daughters got out, right? Found favor in your eyes. So, 1916, the men took hold of his hand, his wife's hand, and the hands of his two daughters. So Lot and his two daughters made it. His wife did not. A remnant is always preserved. That remnant rarely looks the way we want it to look. Our tight-knit nuclear family of idealistic values rarely is what is preserved by the Father. And, and really, if we are to be biblical, you don't see a lot of the tight-knit nuclear family in the Bible. You see an amalgamation of peoples coming together under the direction of the Most High. Not that I have anything against the tight-knit nuclear family. I love it. I think it's great. But it lends credence to the fact that if your life doesn't look like that, you're not out of line of the Father's will. Because these remnants that he preserves over and over and over again are very rarely mom, dad, and 2.3 kids. It's usually a group of people that have been cleaved apart from another group of people. So, take heart in that. All right. So, oh no. Okay, and thus it came to be, Elohim destroyed the cities, and the plain of Elohim, that Elohim remembered Abraham. Who's Elohim? We've talked about this many a time here. Elohim is the plural of El being God, Yahweh. Elohim is the plural. So Elohim refers to the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost, Yahweh, Yeshua, and the Ruach HaKodesh, the Comforter, who came to us on Pentecost 50 days after the Son went back to the Father. Another story for another time. He says, don't worry, guys, I gotta go. But they're like, but Master, no, don't leave us. You're awesome. Who are we going to play tiddlywinks with when you're gone? And he's like, look, I gotta go back. Don't worry, though. The Comforter will be back here. He's really good at Texas Hold'em. We'll all hang out. Viking Preparedness commented on your post. Thank you, Patreon. Okay. Good. And Lot went up out of Soar and dwelt in the mountains, and his 2 daughters were with him, for he was afraid to dwell in Soar. And he and his 2 daughters dwelt in a cave. And the firstborn said to the younger, our father is old, and there is no man on earth to come into us, as is the way of all the earth. Come, let us make our father drink wine, and lie with him, so that we preserve the seed of our father. As I was saying about the tight-knit, nuclear, cute, neat family. Not so much. So they made their father drink wine that night, and the firstborn went in and lay with her father, and he was not aware of it when she lay down or when she arose. And when it came to be on the next day that the firstborn said to the younger, see, I lay with my father last night, let us make him drink wine tonight as well, and you go in and lie with him so that we keep the seed of our father. So they made their father drink wine that night as well, and the younger arose and lay with him, and he was not aware of it, and when she lay down or when she arose. Thus, both the daughters of Lot became pregnant by their father. Jerry, Jerry, Jerry. Oh my gosh. Like, that is not, who is the other guy? The black guy. Not Maury. Maury couldn't handle this. You know who I'm talking about. Yeah, I could see him. Alright, I want to say Malcolm. It's not Malcolm. Thus, both daughters of Lot became pregnant by their father, and the firstborn bore a son, and called his name Moab, so that Jeep could one day name a wrangler after him. He is the father of the Moabites to this day. And the younger, she also bore a son, and called his name Ben-Ami, and he is the father of the children of Ammon, or Ammon, to this day. That makes sense. I've known an Ammon. That sounds about how he came to be. So, alright, so that's the end of Genesis 19. What have we learned here? Step 1, don't get your dad drunk and lay with him. Not good. Montel Williams. Montel might be able to deal with this problem. It's definitely like a Jerry thing, though. We would probably need Montel, Big Steve, Jerry, and Geraldo. Geraldo would be a good one as well. It's going to take a whole slew. Some Dr. Phil. Ricky Lake. Yeah. Ricky Lake. Wow. Nice. Skinny Ricky Lake or fat Ricky Lake? Skinny Ricky Lake. Skinny Ricky. I love it. What do we learn here? The Father preserves a remnant, but it's very rarely the remnant that we think it should look like. So if your life doesn't look precisely the way you feel like it should look like, take heart. That's not usually how God does things. Okay? We see that because Abram did all the things that Yah told him to do, that Yah felt comfortable confiding in him, right? So there was, that establishes a rapport between the two, that there's communications back and forth. That's important, because when we get outside of the Father's will for our life, communications shut down. I know for me, when man, when I'm engaged in sin, it's really hard for me. Shut up, bird. When I'm engaged in sin, it's really hard for me to come to the Father with an open and discerning and genuine heart. Sin separates us from God. You've heard it said 1,000 times in churchianity. Sin separates us from God. Okay. And what's sin? 1 John 3:4, sin is transgression of the law. What is the law? The law is the Torah. Where's that? It's in the Tanakh, the first 5 books of the Bible. If you need some bullet points, read Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy is called, it's the second telling. It's the bullet points of the first 4 books, okay? Which, again, Moshe, they're getting ready to go over, you're dead to me. They're getting ready to go over into the promised land, right? Crossed over into Canaan. And he's like, look, before we do this, we need to have a talk, everybody. Sit down. Everybody take a knee. We're going to have a talk. And Deuteronomy is the second telling to remind them, okay, how do we get here? Where are we going? As I've said before, in order to navigate, to triangulate, you need 3 points. You need to know where you came from and where you are right now to figure out where you're going. So, know yourself, to thine own self be true. I'm sure you've heard that said, but you also need to know, where did I come from? And we talked about Cotton Eye Joe last week as well. My wife is giving me the best looks right now. She's like, aren't you reading the Bible? Why, yes I am, as a matter of fact. So, all right. So the idea here, right, is we can see a clear contrast here between how the Father treats Abraham, because Abraham was in service to the Most High, and how the Father treats Sodom and Gomorrah, because they were not, right? So Abraham is on a first name basis with Yah, literally walks around the planet, walks around Earth with him, right? They talk, they're face to face, they know each other. Because Abraham has been found righteous. Righteous means he's lawful, right? And he does the Father's will for his life. Conversely, Sodom and Gomorrah, not so much. They're like, hey, check out these hot angels. Let's do it. So, not so much.
Nelly, no! Sorry. No.
Should we shoot the dog or shoot the chickens?
No.
And okay. Yada yada. And I guess the last lesson here that we have is, sorry for the interruption. The last lesson here we have is, if the Father literally sends angels to your city and says, y'all need to go, you should go. And when you go, you should probably have your bug out bag. So if they say, hey, we're going to put you up on this mountain, you don't have to go, but sir, I'm not so good with mountains. I don't have lots of stuff. I don't have a thing, right? Which is, when we get into Exodus, we'll probably also talk about the greater Exodus, or what's called the second Exodus. And the concept that we will have food, there will be manna. The concept that we will have water, there will be water. But you're going to need a pot to cook your food in. You're going to need a cup to gather your water in. So you probably need to have a bug out bag. I need to go beat a dog. Even though she's chasing the chickens, it always ruined my videos. So Shabbat Shalom, y'all. Love you guys. Bye.